Tonight, Liberation Day. The shockwaves rippling across our global economy after Trump announces a baseline 10% tariff on all countries.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn.
It's the tariff chart heard round the world. We'll be joined by Canadian Premier Doug Ford, and our Brick Planet is on the ground in China with the ripple effects.
So who loses in all of this?
Everybody, the importers, the wholesalers, the distribution channel owners in the U.S. to then ultimately the consumer.
But how soon will all this impact your wallet and American business? Tonight, a life-threatening cross-country storm is moving from Texas to Michigan, then into the Northeast. Tornadoes and possible flash flooding, up to 15 inches of rain. We're timing it all out. And Elon Musk's time working for the Trump administration may be coming to an end. Our Mary Bruce is standing by with late reporting from the White House. The shocking discovery underneath this giant iceberg and what it tells us about our changing planet. We're joined by one of the stars of the popular TV hit series, The White Lotus, ahead of the big finale Sunday night, what to expect and what it was like to film in paradise.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We are keeping a close eye on what is being called a once-in-a-generation storm taking aim at much of the country. We'll check in with our teams tracking that shortly, but we do begin with another storm that's brewing tonight. Fallout from the sweeping tariffs President Trump revealed late this afternoon. In a Rose Garden event, the president announced global tariffs on a scale this country has not witnessed since the early 1900s. He claims his aim is to reorder global trade and bring jobs and manufacturing back to the United States, a prospect that could take years. He announced an immediate 25% tariff on all foreign-made cars, what he's calling reciprocal tariffs ranging from 10 to 50% on goods from about 60 countries labeled worst offenders by the president. The list includes major trading partners like China, the European Union, Vietnam, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, and India, and a 10% tariff on all imports. American consumers are now bracing for what this will mean for prices. In the meantime, many are carefully watching U.S. and global markets for investors' response to the worldwide shakeup. Our team is standing by, and a short time ago, the Senate issued a rare bipartisan rebuke in a 51-48 vote for Republicans siding with Democrats in an attempt to curtail Trump's ability to levy tariffs against Canada. But the bill is expected to be dead on arrival in the House. On this busy Wednesday night, our Rachel Scott leads us off.
Tonight, with the whole world watching, President Trump in the Rose Garden announcing a sweeping set of tariffs on goods from every country that trades with the United States, a move that threatens to upend the global economy and spike the cost of living for American families. The president insists it's necessary to bring jobs and manufacturing back to America.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence.
The president today declaring a national emergency, imposing a 10% tariff on nearly all foreign imports. Roughly 60 countries, including some of America's closest trading partners, will face even steeper tariffs. A 34% tariff on all imports from China, a 25% tariff on products from South Korea, a 20% tariff on goods from the European Union. President Trump says the higher penalties come in response to tariffs those countries impose on American products they import.
European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad.
But economists point out tariffs on foreign goods coming into the U.S. are actually taxes paid by American businesses who pass on the cost to consumers by raising prices. Economists say these are the highest tariffs America has seen since the early 1900s.
The trade wars that we saw leading up to World War II are part of what got us into World War II. And so that's why we've been trading more with each other and trying to bring down trade barriers over time to avoid some of the kind of pain that we experienced during the Great Depression.
In the past, the president has acknowledged Americans could feel some short-term pain from his tariffs. But today, no mention of the burden families could soon face. with prices expected to rise on everything from clothing to groceries, iPhones to cars.
These tariffs are across the board. They're going to touch everything from going to the grocery store to going out to restaurants to even having to go to places like the movie theater and trying to have a little time off, because everywhere you go, there's some aspect that they have to import to do that.
Take cars, for example. President Trump is imposing a 25% tariff on all cars and parts coming into the country. In Glendale, Wisconsin, I asked Patrick Cumrow what it will mean for his car repair business.
Will you have to raise prices for your customers?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
By how much?
I guess the minimum is going to be 25% on all parts.
Patrick worries his business will suffer if tariffs force him to raise prices on his customers.
Their bill ultimately is going to be higher, and it's not getting us any more money. It's just taking from the customer and, passing it through.
But at the White House today, retired auto worker Brian Panabaker says even if it takes some time, this will lead to more manufacturing jobs.
I don't think it's going to be that long, but we have to be patient and let it happen. So we're happy that the auto workers support what President Trump is doing.
But on Capitol Hill, Democrats aware they lost the election in large part of grocery prices, tonight declaring Trump's policies are about to make things a lot worse.
This is not Liberation Day, it's Recession Day in the United States of America. That's what the Trump tariffs are going to do. Crash the economy.
Jeffries with that very direct warning and message. Rachel Scott joins us now. Rachel, you talked about the likelihood that this could mean higher prices for American consumers. How is the president's team squaring that with his campaign promises to bring prices down?
Yes, Lindsay, and on the campaign trail, the president did make this promise to the American people that he was going to bring down everyday costs for Americans across the country. The president, House Republicans, Senate Republicans over on Capitol Hill, they have acknowledged that this could cause some short-term pain, what the president has described as a little disturbance, because exactly what you're seeing behind me, the president imposing these tariffs on all of our trading partners, the White House bringing these boards into the White House briefing room for the press. Well, that ultimately is going to result in higher prices, as we've outlined. But the White House is now asking Americans to trust them. They say this is going to lead to more manufacturing jobs in the United States. The question now is, how long does that take, and how high will the prices rise? Lindsay.
Right. How long is long term? All right. Rachel Scott, our thanks to you. Let's bring in ABC's chief business and economics correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis. And you and I had been discussing this prior to President Trump's announcement today. The Dow closed up 200 points. But give us a sense of where futures are heading.
Well, at this moment in time, futures are indicative of what's going to happen tomorrow morning when the stock market ultimately opens. The Dow futures are pointing down 1,100 points. And the S&P 500, which is what's reflected in most retirement savings accounts, is down 3.7%. And the thing that gave these markets a real jolt, and I've talked to a lot of people on Wall Street tonight, it was the minute President Trump brought out the chart of reciprocal tariffs. And the reason the reaction was so swift is because of how significant and sizable these tariffs are. A 34% rather tariff on China on top of the already levied 20% tariff on China means China is facing 54% tariffs. These are significant, more significant than anything we've seen since the 1900s. And it really does elevate the risk of a trade war. And it really raises the question of not only what do businesses do? We know businesses here in the U.S. are likely to rise prices because they're paying higher costs, but also how other countries retaliate.
So for the average American consumer, should we expect prices to skyrocket, and when?
Well, we're already starting to see some of the impact, and a lot of people raced out to buy cars because of the fear of the impact. You've seen it reflected in things like groceries, because you can't stockpile groceries in preparation for tariffs. So we're starting to already see it, but in the next 2 weeks to 2 months, you'll really start to see more of that. And by some estimates, American families could be paying as much as $7,000 more a month, or rather $7,000 more a year, in order to account for these new costs. I want to say and make sure that we're clear here, this is a big bet. by President Trump. The objective is to bring manufacturing home. The objective is to create more fairness in the marketplace. But that is easier said than done in a world where it takes 2 to 5 years to build a new factory and billions of dollars. That's a gigantic commitment by companies.
We're out of time, but just if we can sum it up in a yes or no, are analysts suggesting recession is coming?
There's always the possibility. The recession risks are elevated under the current circumstances.
Okay. Rebecca Jarvis, always appreciate your
insight.
insight.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Joining us now is Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario. Thank you so much for joining the show tonight. Premier Ford, first off, your reaction to these new tariffs announced by President Trump.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Lindsay. You know, I was cautiously optimistic. We have to get more into the details. I was cautiously optimistic because we weren't on the list. You know, you had the 2-page list. We weren't on there. We just want to continue building a strong relationship with our closest friends and allies.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has vowed to respond with retaliatory tariffs. What might those look like?
Well, let's take a look at the complete list and really understand it. It wasn't 100% clear on the press conference when he talked about all the countries. I didn't see Canada on the list. I just want to build a strong AMCAN fortress, American Canadian fortress, 2 strongest countries in the world, safest countries, most prosperous. That's what we would like to see, and continue on our incredible relationship over 200 years.
Senator Rand Paul, who co-sponsored a bill to essentially block President Trump's tariffs on Canada, said that he thinks tariffs on trade between U.S. and Canada will threaten America with a recession. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with Senator Paul, and I appreciate his courage. I always said right from day one, a tariff on Canada is a tax on Americans. And that's as clear as day. We're so integrated, our supply chains, not just with auto, but other areas.
President Trump, as you know, referred to today as Liberation Day, the day that the American industry was reborn. But you've called it Termination Day. What did you mean by that?
Well, just similar to Senator Paul, a lot of people would lose their jobs if he inflicts a tremendous amount of tariffs on his largest customer in the world. We do more trade than Japan and South Korea, along with UK and France combined. So I've always said, Lindsay, that we're stronger together, not just economically. We share the same values. You know, we're so integrated.
Of course, there's been ongoing uncertainty with the escalating trade war. What's it going to take, in your estimation, to create stability for consumers on both sides of the border?
Well, everyone wants certainty. The markets want certainty. Businesses want certainty. People want certainty in their lives. And until we sit down and give them certainty, you know, the markets tumbled again today. Hopefully they'll recover if we hear more positive news. And, you know, I always say that, you know, when the consumers are uncertain, that affects everyone on both sides of the border. So let's bring back consumer confidence. Let's reduce inflation.
Let's just explain the backdrop there. Canada is not for sale. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Well, I think under the previous Prime Minister Trudeau, I don't think President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau saw eye to eye on things. President Trump kept saying, become the 51st state. We'll never become the 51st state. We believe in our sovereignty. We're a very resilient country, a proud country. But most importantly, Canadians love the United States. They love America. And I know, talking to a lot of my friends down there, they feel the same way.
We're just getting clarification. I know we were talking about how we have to read a little bit more into this. The White House has specifically said that Canada is unaffected by the tariffs. Your response to that?
Well, first of all, I'm very, very grateful. And I really believe in building relationships, always communicating. That's what we've done, at least myself with Secretary Lutnick. He's a very bright business mind, along with the president. So we just look forward to a great relationship.
Lastly, what do you make of the plummeting tourism of Canadians coming to the United States in recent months?
Well, as I mentioned to Secretary Lutnick the other night, I said the difference between my great friends in the U.S., everyone seems to be going on their merry way, and there's 40 million Canadians at a fever pitch, absolute fever pitch. I've never seen patriotism like this running across our country, and I guess that's their own personal way of boycotting.
Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, we really thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your insight.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And God bless America. God bless Canada. Thank you so much.
Local businesses are preparing for what's to come as tariffs start rolling out. Our Jacqueline Lee hit the ground in Maryland to get a feel from car dealership workers.
Lindsay, the car dealership tells us they have seen a dramatic spike in customers buying new cars. In the last month alone, they have seen a 66% increase in new car sales. That is extraordinary. And the reason why is because customers, they do not want to pay a higher price as a result of tariffs. Cars are already expensive, around averaging about $50,000. Why pay an extra $5,000 or $10,000 if you don't need to? So he says that there is a dramatic increase in the inventory currently on the floor. There are customers in this dealership still looking at cars, trying to pick them out and take advantage of the inventory that is here. But the dealership also telling us there's going to be an increase in the used car sector because the inventory never replenished itself after COVID and the supply chain that got messed up. And so now that there's going to be an increase in demand for that, prices will go up. And the dealership also telling us people are going to be holding on to their cars longer, but because of that 25% tariff on car parts, the cost of service will go up. But in terms of the sentiment, they say regardless, transportation is a necessity. People need it, so they'll find a workaround, and people need cars. So maybe we'll see something like unique financing as a way to help people get this sorted out. Lindsay.
All right, Jacqueline, thank you. Millions of fellow Americans from Texas up to Michigan are on high alert tonight as they face what authorities are calling a multi-day life-threatening storm. Everything from tornadoes, rain, and life-threatening floods across middle America and making its way east. ABC's Victor Oquendo is in Paducah, Kentucky for us tonight.
Tonight, a dangerous and potentially deadly multi-day severe weather outbreak is underway. Families in the heartland bracing for dangerous tornadoes and flooding so extreme, the National Weather Service is calling it a once-in-a-generation weather event.
Please take shelter.
This massive funnel spotted south of St. Louis near Potosi, Missouri this afternoon. This doorbell camera catching a pre-dawn transformer explosion as tornado-warned storms moved into Owasso, Oklahoma, just outside Tulsa. Torrents of rain inundating drivers. This neighborhood hit hard. Trees, fences, and multiple homes heavily damaged. This roof peeled back. South of Kansas City, in Nevada, Missouri, this 360-degree view of the devastation after a confirmed EF1 tornado with winds near 100 miles an hour. It was on the ground for 17 miles. And to the east, in Pilot Grove, a 7-mile-long trail of destruction through town. Authorities say it's a miracle no one was hurt. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear warning families to be ready.
We're really concerned about people's safety, especially in the overnight.
Our thanks to Victor. Let's bring in ABC News meteorologist Samara Theodore. Samara, give us a sense of what you're looking out for.
We are under a tornado emergency that has been issued for parts of Arkansas. Every single red box you're looking at is a tornado warning right now, which means potentially there's a tornado on the ground. So this is just showing how powerful this storm system really is. You know, the threat is no longer coming. It's here. If you live in Memphis, you should be on high alert. Paducah should also be on high alert because this line is now making its way farther to the east. Areas that are currently under a tornado watch are in yellow. That stretches all the way from Shreveport up into Indianapolis. You can see this red box here outlined, which includes all the places we just saw tornado warnings at, but also Paducah, Evansville, Jackson, Memphis, Tupelo. PDS, that means a particularly dangerous situation. That's the type of tornado watch we have here. These aren't just any tornadoes we're talking about. This is the potential for long track, long-lived tornadoes, very large in size, powerful tornadoes. We could see some higher than an EF3. So that's something that we have to keep a close eye on. If you look here at this stationary boundary, that's what's setting up. At 8 a.m. on Thursday, this stalls and it just sits here, bringing copious amounts of rain. So it's not just the tornadoes that are a threat, but it's also this threat for flooding. From Texarkana to Paducah, over 4 million people are at risk for immense flooding. This is very rare to see, a rare high risk for life-threatening flooding. It's in this zone, this area in hot pink, where 1/3 of all flood-related deaths occur and 80% of all flood damage occurs. Lindsay?
And of course, happening at the worst time overnight. All right, Samara Theodora, thanks to you. Next tonight, President Trump has signaled to top advisors that Elon Musk could soon be taking a step back from his high-profile role in the administration. This after the resounding defeat of a Wisconsin Supreme Court candidate that Musk spent millions to try to elect. Here's ABC's chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce.
Tonight, sources tell ABC News Elon Musk's days as President Trump's right hand in the White House could soon be coming to an end. As a, quote, special government employee, Musk's appointment was only supposed to last 130 days, but there were hints Trump wanted to keep him on longer. The world's richest man and his Doge team have dominated the early days of the administration.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
But Musk's chainsaw approach to slashing jobs and government programs sparking anger at town meetings.
Elon was going to be the main topic tonight, and he's going to continue to be the main topic tonight because we are all freaking pissed off about this. You're going to hear it and feel it.
And causing frustration among cabinet secretaries.
Everybody.
Overnight, voters in Wisconsin delivered Musk a firm rebuke, rejecting his choice for a state Supreme Court seat after the billionaire campaigned aggressively in the state and poured millions into the race. And now the president himself has been indicating Musk's time may be up.
I think he's amazing, but I also think he's got a big company to run. And so at some point he's going to be going back. He wants to.
Our thanks to Mary Bruce. The Trump administration continues to make massive cuts at federal agencies, eliminating positions said to have wide-reaching impacts on public health. Cuts at the USDA have halted $500 million in deliveries to food banks across the country, impacting their ability to provide nutritious meals to those in need. Coming up, the estranged wife of a retired Green Beret now charged with his murder, why authorities believe she did it, and how she almost got away. Plus, China was at the very top of President Trump's tariff chart today. He says the tariffs will free the U.S. from dependence on foreign goods, but critics say they could just make some products more expensive if you can find them. Welcome back. As Americans wait to feel the full impact of tariffs on their wallets, manufacturers in China are also bracing for impact. Many say that those added costs caused by tariffs won't be covered by them, but instead will be passed on to American consumers. In tonight's Prime Focus, our Brit Planet traveled to eastern China, the storefront for the world, to see how the prices you pay may change.
Here we are at Yiwu International Trade Market. Inside, 80,000 stores covering the size of 1,000 football fields.
If you've ever ordered something on Temu, Shein or Amazon,
Acupressure mat, knee pads for your garden, sock organizer, as seen on TV. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
It likely came from here.
Hi.
And chances are these goods are about to get pricier because of President Trump's 20% tariffs on all imports from China. The vendors here are already feeling the pinch from the blanket US tariffs. And they say ultimately it's the American consumers who will have to fork out the extra cash for their cheap goods.
He's saying, so that's about $10 US wholesale. If there is a tariff on it, it becomes about $12.50.
This is the China Yiwu Daily Consumer Goods Innovation Exhibition.
We come across Liz Liu. She's live streaming from the exhibition floor.
Do you export from Yiwu and only ship to Afghanistan?
An expert in factory sourcing, Liz connects foreign buyers with Chinese manufacturers.
How would the new tariffs plan of the Trump administration affect your business?
Her playfully edited videos on TikTok and Instagram explain the trade war for her audience outside of China.
I work with the EU market service provider, which is a huge company that owns the entire EU market.
Right.
I do marketing service for them.
I
But
see.
I also import products from EU market and export them to, other countries.
This is modern day trade in China.
I'm a passionate person, and I'm very proud of what China has achieved in the past 40 years. There was a math. If you spend 5 minutes in each shop in the EU market, it will take you 3 months.
Liz's position on US tariffs reflects what the Chinese government repeatedly says too, that there are no winners in a trade war.
So who loses in all of this?
Everybody, from sellers in EU to these trade service providers like shippers, shipping operators, to, in the end, the importers, the wholesalers, the distribution channel owners in the US, to then ultimately the consumers in the US.
There'll be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that.
Tariffs have been a pillar of President Trump's second term, promising that the economic uncertainty Americans are feeling now will be worth it in the long term.
Tariffs are not just about protecting American jobs. They're about protecting the soul of our country. Tariffs are about making America rich again.
And despite warnings from economists that consumers will see higher prices, even sparking fears of recession, he's moving forward.
Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore.
These people in the EU market have been exporting from China for 30 years. How do you think they're going to react to that?
How are they reacting?
They feel like they're being threatened.
Do they say, okay, this is too hard, forget it, we'll focus on other markets and move away? Or is the American market so important that they stick around and find ways to work around it?
People who already invested heavily in the American market would stick around for a while to see what's going to happen. But there are other e-commerce platforms that are opening up outside of the US market.
This is best step to make the nails.
Liz takes us to a nearby factory.
At this factory in Yiwu, China, they specialize in nail products and they churn them out. Look at these. They make 400,000 of these a day. These you'll find on Temu, Amazon, any online store and retail giants across the states. They say they will not be absorbing the costs of President Trump's tariffs. And in fact, they say it will likely be pressed on to the consumer. So these are the generic products that you've got on there, and then a company will come and put their brand on these.
This time, maybe they buy this one from us, it's $1, and then they sell it maybe $2. I think this is not good for the American people.
So you're not taking the costs of the tariffs, it's the consumer that takes it in at the end?
Yes, because we don't change anything.
She tells us, despite US tariffs, orders will continue coming, just from other countries.
To make something like this in the United States would probably cost 3 times as much.
American manufacturers in China, like the CEO of toymaker Basic Fun, Jay Foreman, warns that it's his customers back home who will ultimately pay more.
What could you see this go up to if there were tariffs?
So this bear right now sells for about $15. If tariffs are imposed on this bear, it probably goes up to about $20 or $22 a piece.
Foreman says there are even potential safety concerns if the tariffs force him to break up his reliable supply chain in China and threaten time-tested safety protocols.
When you start to break up that supply chain and pioneer this in new territories and new markets, you go through that learning curve. And that learning curve took us 20, 30 years to figure out. Now it's perfect. You don't see reports that children are being, hurt by toys.
Foreman says it's unrealistic to think that he can move his labor-intensive manufacturing operations back to the US, considering the lack of labor in the face of immigration changes.
Not only is it the type of jobs that Americans really aren't looking to do, but there just might not be enough people in the country to do them.
Are people still going to buy this stuff, or are they going to wait until this is made in America?
This is not going to be made in America, ever.
Never? Yeah. There won't be a time where there's a Yiwu-style wholesale market in the States?
I mean, we can go ahead and open a wholesale market, but the supplies are still going to be coming from China.
Do you think these companies would actually move their production plant back to the US?
Liz continues to post her videos daily, selling Yiwu to the world. hoping China and the US, the world's two biggest economies, will thrash out a deal to soften the blow of this trade war 2.0.
China and the US could work together to achieve a situation where we could both win. I hope for that. And I believe American people hope for that too.
Certainly many hoping for some upside after all. Our thanks to Britt Clennett. Coming up, is Amazon trying to buy TikTok with a deadline now just days away? Plus, an iceberg the size of Chicago reveals a thriving undersea ecosystem. What researchers are learning next in tonight's By the Numbers. Welcome back, everyone. They say it's a small world, but science doesn't think so. More than 80% of the Earth's oceans remain unexplored, unmapped, and unseen by humans. We got a fresh reminder of that after a massive chunk of ice broke off in Antarctica, revealing the wonders below. We take a look tonight by the numbers. Back in January, an iceberg the size of Chicago, 209 square miles, splintered off and drifted away. As luck would have it, a team of scientists was working on a research vessel nearby. They sent a remotely operated sub down more than 4,000 feet deep to inspect the newly exposed sea floor. They didn't expect to find much, so they were stunned to discover a thriving ecosystem of sponges, coral, anemones, and other deep-sea creatures, many likely never seen before. Scientists estimate that up to 91% of ocean species remain unknown. Usually, deep-sea environments like this depend on nutrients that sink down from the ocean's surface, but this ecosystem had been covered by ice that was 500 feet thick for centuries. With no sunlight and limited nutrients, it's hard to know how sponges like this one could grow to be 6 feet in diameter. It only grows a couple centimeters a year, so it's probably hundreds of years old. It could take 20 years to catalog all the life forms found on this once hidden seabed. But one thing is certain, Antarctica isn't just ice and emptiness. It's full of secrets. Some just need a glacier to move out of the way. Coming up, a Yale professor explains why she's leaving her job in her country because of President Trump. Plus, the NBA hammer comes down on players for the melee in Minneapolis just before one of the teams is sold to a legend from a different sport. How 3 young men narrowly rescued 2 women whose crashed car was sinking into a creek. What happened after a massive brawl broke out at an NBA game? And with the TikTok ban about to take effect, Amazon makes a bid to buy the platform. These stories and much more in tonight's rundown.
The Supreme Court sided with the Food and Drug Administration in its crackdown on sweet-flavored vaping products, saying that the Biden-era FDA did not violate federal law when it denied an application from a company to sell them. These flavored e-cigs and vapes, including those that taste like fruit, candy, and mint, have fueled an explosion in retail sales of e-cigarettes. But the unanimous decision, which threw out a federal appeals court ruling, is not final. The FDA could change its approach now that President Donald Trump has promised to save vaping. Court documents reveal that an estranged wife in North Carolina secretly disposed of her Green Beret's husband's body. Officials say Shayna Cloud claimed in a welfare check in January that her husband, Clinton Bonnell, never returned home, but they found his vehicle located in the driveway along with his car keys, book bag for school, and other items. In February, officials found his body as heard in this 911 call obtained by our station WTVD.
It looks like there might be a part of a body floating out in the water.
Officials are looking for the rest of Bonnell's body. Cloud's bond was denied and she remains in jail. Her attorney maintains her innocence. Amazon has reportedly made a last-minute bid to purchase TikTok ahead of it being banned in this country on Saturday. The Supreme Court ruled the ban was necessary for national security unless it shed its Chinese ownership, but President Trump paused that ban. President Trump is taking meetings on the future of the company. After a dispute over a previous sale contract, owner Glenn Taylor has agreed to the Mark Lore Alex Rodriguez group acquiring 100% ownership of the Minnesota Timberwolves and Minnesota Lynx. In other NBA news, 3 players from the Detroit Pistons and 2 from the Minnesota Timberwolves have received suspensions as a result of a skirmish that broke out between the two teams. Republican Senator Jim Banks is going viral for an exchange caught on camera with a former Health and Human Services employee.
I was fired illegally.
You probably deserved it.
I deserved it?
You probably deserved it.
I deserved it.
Dude, that's
wow.
sad.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Why did I deserve it?
Because you seem like a clown.
The former federal worker reportedly helped support elderly Americans and people with disabilities. Senator Banks has since doubled down on his statements and said he supports DOJ's cuts. 2 women were saved from a submerged vehicle in North Carolina when 3 men who just happened to be nearby sprang into action.
I was just feeling for something, and I felt an arm. I just pulled and I got the driver out.
The driver was stuck in her seat and completely submerged as the car was flipped upside down in a creek. The driver's foot reportedly got stuck on the accelerator.
3 professors at Yale say they are fleeing the country and going to teach in Canada because of President Trump. The White House has launched broad attacks on America's universities, using the threat of federal funding to force them to ban diversity initiatives and crack down on transgender policies. The administration is also threatening the immigration status of multiple foreign-born students and faculty. Professor Marcy Short says she's had enough and is leaving to teach at the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy in Toronto. Professor, welcome to the show. You said in an interview, quote, "I can feel that the country is going into free fall. I fear that there's going to be a civil war, and I don't want to bring my kids back into that." Do you feel that the situation really is that dire?
I do feel that the situation is that dire. Now, that said, I didn't just suddenly flee. These offers that we've had from the Munk School have been in the works for a couple of years. There are reasons why it's a very compelling place to do the kind of work that I do. And so it was a complex family decision. But do I think it's that dire? Yes, I do think it's that dire.
You're a professor history. Does the current climate remind you of any other period in time?
I'm a historian of totalitarianism, and I have been thinking about the 1930s obsessively. I began to think about the 1930s from 2008 when Sarah Palin came on the scene, and I saw that her relationship with John McCain was eerily reminiscent of the relationship between the old right and the new fascist right in places like Hungary and Romania in the 1930s.
Yale is one of more than 50 schools being investigated for alleged racial discrimination against white, Jewish, and Asian students. How much of your decision to leave was driven by universities, Columbia among them, caving to demands from the White House?
I would say very little, because we had made our decision before that came on the scene. We had made our decision in the aftermath of the election. What is happening at universities that terrifies me most, that I did anticipate more than the crackdown on free speech, was the abduction and taking away of people walking down the street. This is very 1930s-esque, not just Nazi Germany, but also the Stalinist Soviet Union. This reign of arbitrariness, that guys in masks not identifying themselves can take anyone away at any time, throw them in some kind of dungeon-like prison, and nobody has any recourse, and you don't know for how long, and no rule of law is obtaining.
How much of a risk do you think that there is of brain drain, of America losing its best and brightest minds over what's happening in Washington?
That remains to be seen. I in no way feel that it's a great act of courage to leave. On the contrary, I feel quite guilty about leaving, and I have enormous respect for my colleagues who have decided to stay. I have always trusted myself to speak the truth, and in that sense to be intellectually courageous, or at least to maintain integrity. I have never trusted myself to be physically courageous. And when I was recently back at Yale meeting with my advisees, undergraduates and graduate students, I'm thinking now, what would I do if somebody came to take them away when I'm walking past the library with them, or sitting in a coffee shop or in the dining hall? Would I try to pull the mask off? Would I try to pull these men away? And that would probably be laughable, because I'm a middle-aged woman. I'm not particularly strong. Would I scream? Would I cry? Would I run away? Would I videotape the scene? I don't know. And that not knowing terrifies me. I don't trust myself to be brave if faced with physical violence. And I feel like the physical violence is brewing, and has been brewing for a long time.
Professor Marcy Short, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
The White Lotus season finale is this Sunday, and so many mysteries are due to finally unravel. Our next guest is a star of the hit show and an actor with a career spanning 6 decades. He is best known for his iconic roles in The Silence of the Lambs, Apocalypse Now, and The Leftovers, just to name a few. On The White Lotus, he plays American businessman Jim Hollinger, the owner of the luxury resort in Thailand, which the series is named after. But things turn upside down when a guest hell-bent on justice threatens all that Jim has built in a meeting of fate. Let's take a look.
This is a great country. And back then, not much red tape. You hit a roadblock, you had a lot of options.
And if somebody got in your way, made your life difficult.
Lots of ways to take care of that.
And joining us now is none other than Mr. Scott Glenn. Thank you so much for joining us. Privilege.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so it's finally been revealed in last week's episode who this mysterious co-owner was. Of course, we knew your wife on the show, Shri Tala, is the owner. There's been, I guess it's been shrouded in secrecy, really, who this person was. Who is Jim Hollinger, the character you play?
Jim Hollinger is a guy who came to Thailand about 60 years ago with the Peace Corps. At that time, Thailand was flooded with cash, basically from the opium trade. I got my hands on a bunch of it, started a construction company, started building buildings, branched into hotels. Now I own half of Thailand.
Expat businessman, what drew you to this character of Jim?
When I was first found out about the show, my agent called me up and said, White Lotus wants to know about your availability, and if they offer you a part on it, you've got to do it because audiences are obsessive about this thing. And I personally am one of the world's worst audiences. I basically watch a lot of news and a lot of sports.
We're glad about that.
A lot of sports, dance shows, and that's pretty much it.
So you hadn't seen White Lotus?
I hadn't seen it at all. And they sent me a description of the character, which kind of pissed me off because it was once again, an old guy with a cane who is a force of nature, still mentally sharp. And I thought, in the last 3 or 4 years, I've been offered 5 parts that I've all turned down. 4 of them were dying of Alzheimer's. 3 of them had a walker. 1 of them was in an iron lung. So I was pretty much ready to say, I don't want to do this thing. But I watched the first episode of season 1 that night with my wife, with Carol. And I was instantly seduced by it. And I thought, this show is a dance, like a dance for real. The way it's cut, bringing it into the rhythm of the music, the rhythm of palm fronds on the wind. Literally, it's a dance. And so I watched the second episode, and I stood up in my bedroom and started to dance at the beginning of the show. And I danced for the whole hour. At the end of the hour, I was right in rhythm with the show.
And how was it working in Thailand, being with the Four Seasons Hotel?
Super fun, since I didn't have to swipe my credit card.
Exactly, yes. All right, last question. I don't know if you can answer this, so we understand if you can't. Are we finally going to find out if Jim really had Rick's father killed?
Stay tuned.
Good answer. Scott Glenn, what a privilege and pleasure to have you on the show. Really appreciate it. You can watch the finale and the rest of season 3 of The White Lotus this Sunday on HBO, and it will also be available to stream on Max. He gave life to characters from all walks of life, from Top Gun to Batman Forever, from a spot-on Jim Morrison to an unforgettable Doc Holliday. Tonight, our David Muir remembers Val Kilmer.
Congratulations on Top Gun.
Val Kilmer was one of Hollywood's most magnetic stars in the 1980s and 90s. Iceman and Top Gun.
You guys really are cowboys. What's your problem, Kazansky?
A leading man who could play a wide range of roles.
You're everyone's problem. That's because every time you go up in the air, you're unsafe.
His big break came in 1984 with the comedy Top Secret.
My name's Nick.
Nick? What does that mean?
Nothing. My dad thought of it while I was shaving.
2 years later, playing opposite Tom Cruise in Top Gun.
You can be my wingman anytime.
There was a line in the movie that revealed the reason behind his nickname, Iceman.
It's the way he flies, ice cold, no mistakes.
He'd go on to play rock star Jim Morrison in the biopic The Doors in 1991.
Come on, baby, light my fire.
No, but I like it.
Light my fire.
Doc Holliday in Tombstone.
We started a game we never got to finish.
Batman Forever in 1995.
A man's got to go his own way.
My name is August Christopher.
And a dozen different characters as a master of disguise in The Saint.
What are you staring at?
He would marry his co-star, actress Joanne Whalley, on the set of Willow. In 2014, he was diagnosed with throat cancer. He would continue to act, including reprising his fighter pilot role in Top Gun Maverick.
One last thing. Who's the better pilot? You or me?
This is a nice moment. Let's not ruin it.
Val Kilmer died overnight at the age of 65, surrounded by family and friends. In a 2021 documentary, his son Jack, narrating for his father, who had lost his voice to cancer.
In order to find each character, I've had to put a little bit of me in them and find a little bit of them in me. I have behaved poorly. I have behaved bravely. And I have no regrets because I've lost and found parts of myself that I never knew existed. And I am blessed.
Val Kilmer with no regrets. Our thanks to David for that. Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin with a treacherous once-in-a-lifetime storm system stretching from Texas to Ohio. The system is already triggering violent weather, and the National Weather Service is warning millions to prepare as the main line of storms and potential tornadoes is expected throughout the night, and then days of heavy rain and life-threatening flooding to follow. A tornado ripped through an Oklahoma town outside of Tulsa, leaving a 12-mile track of downed trees and snapped telephone poles. This evening, a possible tornado was spotted south of St. Louis in Potosi, Missouri, and more tornado warnings are popping up across Missouri and Arkansas. Residents in West Memphis and Marion, Arkansas are loading up with sandbags today in preparation for what's to come. And just a little while ago, the local ABC station began reporting tornado sightings in this area. We have the latest forecast in a moment, but first, here's ABC's Victor Oquendo in Paducah, Kentucky.
Tonight, a dangerous and potentially deadly multi-day severe weather outbreak is underway. Families in the heartland bracing for dangerous tornadoes and flooding so extreme, the National Weather Service is calling it a once-in-a-generation weather event.
Please take shelter.
This massive funnel spotted south of St. Louis near Potosi, Missouri this afternoon. This doorbell camera catching a pre-dawn transformer explosion as tornado-warned storms moved into Owasso, Oklahoma, just outside Tulsa. Torrents of rain inundating drivers. This neighborhood hit hard. Trees, fences, and multiple homes heavily damaged. This roof peeled back. South of Kansas City, in Nevada, Missouri, this 360-degree view of the devastation after a confirmed EF1 tornado with winds near 100 miles an hour. It was on the ground for 17 miles. And to the east, in Pilot Grove, a 7-mile-long trail of destruction through town. Authorities say it's a miracle no one was hurt. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear warning families to be ready.
We're really concerned about people's safety, especially in the overnight.
Let's bring in ABC News meteorologist Samara Theodore. Samara, give us a sense of what you're looking out for.
We are under a tornado emergency that has been issued for parts of Arkansas. Every single red box you're looking at is a tornado warning right now, which means potentially there's a tornado on the ground. So this is just showing how powerful this storm system really is. You know, the threat is no longer coming, it's here. If you live in Memphis, you should be on high alert. Paducah should also be on high alert because this line is now making its way farther to the east. Areas that are currently under a tornado watch are in yellow. That stretches all the way from Shreveport up into Indianapolis. You can see this red box here outlined, which includes all the places we just saw tornado warnings at, but also Paducah, Evansville, Jackson, Memphis, Tupelo. PDS, that means a particularly dangerous situation. That's the type of tornado watch we have here. These aren't just any tornadoes we're talking about. This is the potential for long track, long-lived tornadoes, very large in size, powerful tornadoes. We could see some higher than an EF3. So that's something that we have to keep a close eye on. If you look here at this stationary boundary, that's what's setting up. At 8 a.m. on Thursday, this stalls and it just sits here, bringing copious amounts of rain. So it's not just the tornadoes that are a threat, but it's also this threat for flooding. From Texarkana to Paducah, over 4 million people are at risk for immense flooding. This is very rare to see, a rare high risk for life-threatening flooding. It's in this zone, this area in hot pink, where 1/3 of all flood-related deaths occur and 80% of all flood damage occurs. Lindsay?
And of course, happening at the worst time overnight. All right, Samara Theodora, thanks to you. Now let's change gears, get to those sweeping tariffs President Trump revealed late this afternoon. In a Rose Garden event, the president announced global tariffs on a scale this country has not seen since the early 1900s. He claims his aim is to reorder global trade and bring jobs and manufacturing back to the United States, a prospect that could take years. But many are expressing concern tonight about what it will mean for the prices American consumers ultimately have to pay, as well as the impact on the economy. ABC's Rachel Scott has more.
Tonight, with the whole world watching, President Trump in the Rose Garden announcing a sweeping set of tariffs on goods from every country that trades with the United States, a move that threatens to upend the global economy and spike the cost of living for American families. The president insists it's necessary to bring jobs and manufacturing back to America.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence.
The president today declaring a national emergency, imposing a 10% tariff on nearly all foreign imports. Roughly 60 countries, including some of America's closest trading partners, will face even steeper tariffs. A 34% tariff on all imports from China, a 25% tariff on products from South Korea, a 20% tariff on goods from the European Union. President Trump says the higher penalties come in response to tariffs those countries impose on American products they import.
European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You know, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad.
But economists point out tariffs on foreign goods coming into the U.S. are actually taxes paid by American businesses who pass on the cost to consumers by raising prices. Economists say these are the highest tariffs America has seen since the early 1900s.
The trade wars that we saw leading up to World War II are part of what got us into World War II. And so that's why we've been trading more with each other and trying to bring down trade barriers over time to avoid some of the kind of pain that we experienced during the Great Depression.
In the past, the president has acknowledged Americans could feel some short-term pain from his tariffs. But today, no mention of the burden families could soon face, with prices expected to rise on everything from clothing to groceries, iPhones to cars.
These tariffs are across the board. They're going to touch everything from going to the grocery store to going out to restaurants to even having to go to places like the movie theater and trying to have a little time off, because everywhere you go, there's some aspect that they have to import to do that.
Take cars, for example. President Trump is imposing a 25% tariff on all cars and parts coming into the country. In Glendale, Wisconsin, I asked Patrick Cumrow what it will mean for his car repair business.
Will you have to raise prices for your customers?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
By how much?
I guess the minimum is going to be 25% on all parts.
Patrick worries his business will suffer if tariffs force him to raise prices on his customers.
Their bill ultimately is going to be higher, and it's not getting us any more money. It's just taking from the customer and passing it through.
But at the White House today, retired auto worker Brian Panabaker says even if it takes some time, this will lead to more manufacturing jobs.
I don't think it's going to be that long, but we have to be patient and let it happen. So we're happy that the auto workers support what President Trump is doing.
But on Capitol Hill, Democrats aware they lost the election in large part of grocery prices, tonight declaring Trump's policies are about to make things a lot worse.
This is not Liberation Day, it's Recession Day in the United States of America. That's what the Trump tariffs are going to do. Crash the economy.
Very direct message there from Jeffries. Our thanks to Rachel Scott. As our trade partners abroad are waking up to President Trump's Rose Garden announcements, our Brit Planet is in Hong Kong for more reaction. Brit, at this early hour there in Hong Kong, any indication of how markets there will respond?
Hey, Lindsay. Well, yeah, Asian markets only just opening, so we'll have to see how they respond, but they are poised to take a hit. Japan, they were down, futures, they're down 6%. Australian markets are open. They're already down 2%. Australia facing a 10% tariff. Gold trading at a record high as investors they look for safe havens. There is an understanding, Lindsay, that the levels that are set are negotiation starting points, so that could spur uncertainty and likely reverberate across Asia.
And as we saw during the president's Rose Garden announcement, he's imposing an additional 34% so-called reciprocal tariff on China. That's on top of the existing 20% for an effective tariff rate of 54%. Any word on what kind of negotiations China and others might try to engage with the U.S. to avoid this?
Yeah, so that 54%, that's closer to the 60% that President Trump had touted on the campaign trail. Now, even though we do expect a strong response from China, Trump's trade actions so far, they haven't come as such a surprise to China. You know, China's been preparing for this for months. Even its annual parliamentary session really very much focused on establishing a robust economy, diversifying its export markets. We know that the U.S. market is important, but the sentiment we gauge from speaking to traders on the ground in China's wholesale marketplace is that they've already started shifting to other markets. Also, the message from them was American consumers now need to expect their goods to become more expensive. We know Apple overseas production hubs are vulnerable given the iPhone maker's presence in countries like China and Vietnam. Vietnam has also recently become the place where many companies, including clothing manufacturers, had actually shifted to escape Chinese tariffs. It's now facing 46%. One U.S. manufacturer had described it to me as a moving target. 32% against Taiwan too, so we can expect chips to become more expensive. In terms of how China is going to respond, so far their response has been quite calibrated, but we do expect a strong response today.
Still a wait and see until then. All right, Brit Planet for us in Hong Kong. Thanks so much, Brit. For more analysis, let's bring in foreign policy and international development expert Matthew McGuire. Thank you so much for joining us. Matthew, some may think a 10% baseline tariff isn't all that massive, but you say don't be misled. Put things into perspective for us.
Right. The point that matters here is that we get about 60% of our imports from just four places: Canada, Mexico, China, and EU. And the tariffs on imports coming from those countries are between 20 and 54%. The 34 for China plus the extra 20 there. That's a massive increase, a massive tax on American businesses who have to import those, at least in the near to medium term. Now, what happens when businesses see input costs go up? A couple of things. One, prices go up for consumers. Then what happens? Sales go down. What happens when sales go down? People get laid off. So I'm quite concerned about this because I think we can see a very clear path for massive disruption that'll lead to a lot fewer jobs in America.
President Trump claims that his tariffs will free Americans from dependence on foreign goods and ultimately bring jobs and factories back to the U.S. But you say the long-term strategy is contradictory. How so?
Because one of the things the president said today, if you listened, was he said we were being treated very unfairly. And that may well be the case in certain instances. But he also said if countries didn't want us to have any tariffs on them, they could just drop to zero with tariffs against us. So if countries did that, let's say Vietnam does that, let's say that Canada does that, well, what's the incentive for U.S. companies to then bring factories back into the U.S.? The whole point is supposed to be to change corporate behavior and get them to build factories here. But if he's saying other countries can just cut a deal and knock tariffs off on both sides, then we're not going to get those manufacturer jobs coming back in. The final thing I'd say on this is really important. We're going to see a lot of pain across the entire economy here, as everyone has admitted. And yet manufacturing is only 10% of the total jobs in America. So I'm concerned about the other 90% and really keep asking people, when are we going to see economic policies that will affect that overwhelming majority of American workers so they can see better jobs, better retirement benefits, better health care, and so on?
Matthew McGuire, we thank you so much for your time and insight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tonight, a federal judge dismissed the corruption case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams and said the case cannot be refiled. President Trump's Justice Department tried to drop the mayor's case, arguing that it impaired his ability to cooperate with mass deportations, but they also wanted the option to be able to bring the charges back. Judge Dale Ho refused, saying everything here smacks of a bargain. Mayor Adams has insisted all along he did nothing wrong. And we are tracking several headlines around the world. The Israeli military released video today showing troops operating in the southern Gaza Strip city of Rafah. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel aims to establish a new security corridor across the Gaza Strip and suggested the corridor will cut the southern city of Rafah off from the rest of the Palestinian territory. Gaza's health ministry said at least 60 people were killed in Israeli strikes today. 19 people, including children, were killed in a strike at a UN clinic being used to house displaced people. The judges in the case involving the death of Argentinian soccer great Diego Maradona are hearing new details about his conditions in his final days. 7 health professionals face up to 25 years in prison for negligent homicide related to Maradona's death. Experts involved in the autopsy testified that Maradona's heart was twice the average weight, and he suffered from a long-time disorder with a lack of blood flow and oxygen. Forensic experts have also testified that Maradona suffered in agony for at least 12 hours before his death and that, quote, any doctor should have recognized his symptoms days earlier. The trial is expected to last for several more months. Rescue teams in earthquake-ravaged Myanmar pulled 2 men alive from ruins today, 5 days after the 7.7 magnitude earthquake. The team of Turkish and local rescue workers used an endoscopic camera to locate one survivor on a lower floor of a damaged hotel where he worked.
Can he understand me? He is very strong.
Yeah,
he has been there for a long time.
He has a beautiful smile.
Tell
him he's smiling. I can see he's smiling.
We see you, okay? We are very close now, okay?
The team was able to gingerly pull the man through a whole jackhammer through a floor and load him onto a gurney nearly 108 hours after he was trapped. Coming up, breakout country star Tucker Wetmore tells us why all he needs is 3 chords and the truth, and his secret talent other than music. Tucker Wetmore has taken the country music world by storm in just 1 year. He's racked up nearly 1 billion streams and is nominated for New Male Artist of the Year by the Academy of Country Music. He's now gearing up for the release of his highly anticipated debut album, What Not To, featuring his platinum single, Wind Up Missing You. Let's take a listen.
You look like I'm done looking, but girl, the hard truth is if this night don't turn into 2, you look like I'm gonna wind up missing you.
Joining us now is singer and songwriter Tucker Wetmore. So good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I noticed a theme, so it looks like you wear baseball hats with different animals on top. Any significance
Every once in a while,
to that?
yeah. I like animals and I like hats.
All right, so your debut album is just about upon us. What Not To. It's been a whirlwind year. How does it feel to have already had so much success and about to release the album?
I mean, I'm pretty fired up about the album. I feel like it's been a long time coming to, you know, and to this point, I've only got like a handful of songs out, you know, an EP last year and then a couple singles here and there. But, you know, having a whole record coming out, I'm just blessed to be able to do so. One
of those singles, 321,
yes, ma'am.
About a woman who got away, ended up with mascara on her shirt.
Seems to be a theme.
Because of you. Can you tell us anything about this woman in particular?
I mean, I guess I pulled from a couple experiences with a couple different women, but, you know, it's just the old classic heartbreak country song.
Of 2 of the songs that you've had come out, Wind Up Missing You, Wine Into Whiskey, already both of those platinum.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you surprised at all the success that's come so quickly?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. You know, when I first started making music is because I love it, you know, and I love to create, and I love what music does for me and in my soul. And, you know, the fact that some people like what I'm doing as well, you know, it's a good feeling.
From a small town in Washington
Yes, ma'am.
State, big-time athlete in what, track?
Back in my day.
Pole vault, football.
Yeah.
What attracted you to music?
I mean, so I started playing when I was like 10 or 11. I kind of just sat down at a piano one day and didn't really get up for years, you know, and it was my therapy back in the day. And then I kind of put it down to focus on sports, and then God had other plans for me, so I couldn't help but listen. And then music found me again, and I'm thankful that it did.
What's most of the inspiration that you draw upon when you're writing your songs?
Real life stuff. So it's like what I'm going through, what I've been through, or what I see my buddies or my family going through. You know, it's just I pull from everyday life and try to make it sound as new as possible and as good as possible. And you know, hopefully I do a good job every once in a while.
Luke Bryan, Thomas Rhett,
Yes,
already doing tours with them, got your own tour as well. What do you like about those live performances, connecting with the fans?
I love them. It's the most fun. You know, just being out there and seeing, you know, kind of putting faces to the numbers, and having people sing your songs back to you. There's no other feel into it. You know, I feel like it would be comparable to like playing in the state championship game or you know, in the national championship game or whatever it is. But it feels better. It fills my soul more, you know.
When you already have one album that you're anticipating coming out, are you already writing music for the next album, or do you
absolutely.
just focus on this one?
Yeah, definitely already working on the next album. Because this album's been done, you know, I turned it in probably a couple months ago, but you know, it's just right back around. I can't stay out of the writing room, and you know, all these ideas that me and my buddies have, we can't just let them simmer. We gotta act upon it, you know.
We are excited for you. All the best to you. Continued
Thank you
success,
so much.
Tucker. Thank you so much for coming on the show. His debut album, What Not To, will be released on April 25th. And coming up, they say getting outdoors and doing something you love, those are supposed to be keys to longevity. This record-breaking llama just may be proof of that. Our Danny New will explain. One member of the family at a very special camp for kids in the Tar Heel State is now 120 years old, but that's in human years. His name is White Top, and he's not only making friends, he's making history. Here's ABC's Danny New.
Shoot! For families visiting Victory Junction, this free camp for kids with chronic and serious medical conditions has been given titles like the, quote, best place on earth.
It's a place where kids can just be kids, no matter what.
Well, recently the nonprofit in Randleman, North Carolina added one more honor.
He's actually super, super sweet.
Home of possibly the world's longest tenured llama. This is White Top, whom Guinness World Records just crowned as the planet's oldest llama in captivity at 27 years old.
He's very calm, sweet. He's not very intimidating.
Barn director Billy Joe Davis says White Top has been with him for almost 2 decades. After, listen to this, originally spending his first 8 years as what they call a show llama.
So that was him when he was a baby.
Oh, he's beautiful. After his award-winning stint in showbiz, White Top has since become a pillar of the camp's therapy programs. Billy Joe says he provides what they call sensory input for kids when they get to come over and just pet him.
If he's up and moving around, he generally will notice that the campers are coming towards him, and he typically will lay down for them, so they give him back scratches and get to see how calm he gets with them, and they just love it.
For the record, and contrary to their reputation, Billy Joe says this llama has never spit on any camper. One person writes on Instagram, "All my homies love White Top." So with a llama's lifespan in the wild usually being about 20 years, one question remains. What is the secret to White Top's record-breaking longevity?
We truly believe it's the camper interactions. He truly loves his job.
They love their llama. Our thanks to Danny New for that. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.